What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a horror movie that was released in the late 90s. And the reason I decided to watch this is obviously October is approaching. And as you guys know that have been following me for a while, around September and October, I review mostly horror movies. It is my favorite genre. I love horror. It's very important to me. And I chose to watch this movie for kind of nostalgia reasons, but in a very different way. I have never seen this movie before until now, but when I was a kid growing up in the 90s, my parents went to Blockbuster a lot, so we rented a lot of movies or bought like discount DVDs that they had at the store. And I also went to my public library quite often and rented a lot of DVDs. That was a lot of my early exposure into movies. And for some reason, the cover of this movie is so deeply embedded in my brain, and I have never watched it. I saw it in the late 90s, early 2000s when it was first released. I saw it multiple times throughout my middle and high school years, going to the library and the horror section. And for some reason, I never rented this movie. And it's funny now looking at it with the actors involved and kind of the tone that this is a movie that I've never seen. And it's a remake of a film from Vincent Price's era of horror. I actually have a full poster of the original of this movie on my wall at my house. And so that got me excited to see it. Just thinking about the nostalgia of growing up in that era and being like, hey, this is like available for free on Tubi. And I've seen this so many times in my life, but for some reason never sat down and watched it. So today I'm going to be discussing with you House on Haunted Hill. House on Haunted Hill is directed by William Malone. An amusement park mogul offers a random group of diverse people $1 million to spend the night in a decrepit former mental institution. So I was really excited to watch this movie because, as I said, saw the cover about a million times when I was a kid, and it's not a good movie by any means. It is incredibly entertaining, though, and it's not a movie that I feel like I would go back and revisit a ton. But there's something about this era of horror filmmaking that there were so many tropes in the very specific style, whether that be musical choices, editing transitions, cinematography. So many of these films from the late 90s and the early 2000s, they feel very similar. And I like going back and revisiting it because it's kind of like a time capsule. And there's a lot of cool risks taken in this movie, but I feel like overall it does suffer from poor pacing and some other issues that I'll get into when I talk about the movie as a whole. So at the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to Stephen Price, played by Geoffrey Rush, and Evelyn, played by Famke Janssen. And the two of them are married. He is an amusement park owner. He is a multimillionaire, and he's very eccentric. We see like him walking people around his amusement park at the beginning of the movie, and it's very schlocky, but it's also incredibly fun. And him and his wife, there's clearly like some tension in their relationship, and her birthday is coming up. One day we see Evelyn in her bathroom, like she's taking a bath and she's watching TV. And she's watching this, like, it's almost like an unsolved mystery episode about this abandoned mental institute. And she ends up making a phone call and telling her husband that she has an idea. And so then we get this slew of limousines driving out to this institution. And we're introduced to a multitude of characters. And they're all from different backgrounds and walks of life. And one of the characters is Bridgette, played by Chris Kattan, whose family owns the institution. You can tell he's a little off put about going in there. He's very nervous about it. And they all go inside and are told by Stephen Price that this is essentially a game. They have all been invited there to try to survive the night at this institution, and that if they can all survive, they'll all make $1 million. But if someone dies during the stay or can't be found, that money gets bucketed in and divided into everyone else's initial million. And so the entirety of the film is this group of people trapped inside this insane asylum trying to survive for one night. So, like I said, this movie is incredibly entertaining, but deeply, deeply flawed. And that's for a multitude of reasons. I'll start by giving the positives. I love the setting of this and the attention to detail in the production design. What's really cool is like you walk in this modern house from 1999, early 2000s, and they pay really close attention to detail at how everything looks, very clean and remodeled and upkept. And you go into the basement, and it's essentially an abandoned insane asylum from the 1930s. And there's a lot of cool set pieces. There's like machinery from the abandoned asylum that they do like expositional dialogue explaining. And I like it. It creates this very alive environment that makes it really easy for you to settle in and watch the movie. There are some really outdated effects in this, and there's one effect in general towards the end of the movie. But I actually commend the director for trying to go for it because it's almost kind of haunting staring at it. Like, there's some moments of CGI with it that are really, really terrible, but there's other moments that when it's kind of off in the distance or approaching that it looks better than others. But in this time period where technology was very rough around the edges, I think that it's awesome that the director had this vision for something very grandiose and managed to pull it off somewhat. I don't think that it works perfectly, but I like where they were going with it. I think that it does a really nice job building suspense and tension throughout the movie. You're just wondering like what different characters' intentions are and who you can trust. And I like that being confined in a space with people that you know nothing about. That would happen, and I think the director does a nice job doing that. But that's where my problems begin. For starters, the performances in this are horrendous, and there are some really talented actors in this movie. But the dialogue, I don't think it's necessarily the actor's fault, because I mean, you look at someone like Geoffrey Rush, who has been doing this a long time, and he is hamming it up in this movie. The dialogue, there are some one-liners in this that are so cringeworthy and awful that I just could not believe they incorporated it into the movie. And then I reminded myself it was 1999, so I wasn't shocked. There were so many like attempts at comedic beats. Chris Kattan is awful in this movie, and I used to love Chris when he was on Saturday Night Live and in some of those offshoot movies that he did outside of Saturday Night Live. But this movie, he just kind of phones it in. It's really bad. Like, he's one of the characters that I felt like it was almost like he didn't want to be there. Like, he would have moments where he was trying to pull a genuine comedic beat, but like for the most part he was very kind of like lackadaisical, and just like the way he delivered his dialogue, I don't know if he necessarily wanted to be there. Most of the actors that are in the movie don't seem like they want to be there. And it creates a very strange chemistry between the characters because, like, their motivation, especially like Ali Larter's character, her character is just really strange. And, like, the decisions that she makes and the things that she's doing. And then we get, like, a heavy exposition dump as to what's really going on. And I don't know, I just felt like her character was really odd and out of place. Characters in this movie make the most nonsensical decisions that you can imagine. People just wander off, like they're paired off in twos, and one person just randomly walks away and the other person goes, where did you go, where did you go? And it's like people keep making the same mistakes over and over again, even though it's constantly reiterated the importance of people kind of sticking together. And it's just silly after a while. You kind of roll your eyes at people making the same dumb decisions over and over again. And the twist of the movie, it's a little cliche. I laughed at it, and it's relatively anticlimactic, especially the ending. Like, there's a couple of cool moments that I appreciated with specific characters, and I don't necessarily think that the experience overall is completely and totally fulfilling, but it's silly and over the top and ridiculous. And sometimes that's all I want in a horror movie, is I just want to sit down and watch something absurd. And I'm not telling you that this movie is good by any means, but I think if you watch it and you have this like nostalgia for the late 90s, early 2000s, you'll find something to appreciate with it. So have you seen House on Haunted Hill? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was not great, but it definitely had its entertaining moments. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.